Welcome on into BKL Nightly. I'm Thad Brown along with Caleb Carr and Rachel Liebert. Today what we're going to do is go through all of the players who were significantly injured for the Bills. Starters, guys who are still under contract for next year who missed significant time. And we're going to talk about how much of an impact those guys might be able to have in 2026. We're going to put them each into one of three buckets. We're going to call them either a game changer, a hole plugger, which means that you can play them, but maybe not with a huge amount of impact, or a guy we think the Bills should be moving on from, which means exactly what it sounds like, that player should be elsewhere coming 2026. Got a lot of names on the list here. We'll see how many we get to over the course of this half hour, but it was a team that was significantly banged up. It was funny when we were putting this show together. The initial reaction was, well, were there enough guys? And we started, well, what about this guy? And then there's this guy. And then there's this guy. Yeah,
going.
Exactly. We figured out, we could probably do a half-hour show with this. So let's start at receiver for no particular reason with Josh Palmer, a guy who came to Buffalo with, I think, significant expectations, certainly as the Bills, one of their top free agent signings of the offseason, ended up having issues with the ankle late in the season, was not available for the postseason. Caleb, you can go first here on Josh Palmer. Give me what bucket you put him in terms of what he could be impact-wise for next season.
I don't like that we're starting with him because my take on him is a little weird and it's going to make it look like I don't understand the game that we're playing. I'm going to go with hole plugger for what this current roster is looking at next season. I think he's a decent wide receiver to have on the roster. I don't think he really saves a ton of money if you get rid of him, but if the Bills do what I think a lot of Bills fans hope that they do and get a guy in free agency or maybe another guy in the draft, even just picking up two other guys, he immediately becomes a get rid of for me. I don't, to me, he's just kind of like there to fill space. And he's a decent option to fill space. But if you can find some other guys to kind of take up room at the top of the depth chart, there's not really he doesn't really fit in the middle of the depth chart anymore, in my opinion. But for right now, I'm going to say hole plugger because if he is a guy that's, third, fourth in the depth chart, I feel confident in his ability at that spot.
And I think you can, over the course of this, if you guys want, you could say moving on, assuming the Bills land someone that makes sense there, that I'd hold on to him on only if I have to.
Yes.
I don't put Palmer in that bucket. I'm going to make him squarely a hole plugger. I don't think the Bills can add enough receivers to realistically push him off the roster.
That's a good point.
Shakir's going to play next year. And, I mean, Keon Coleman is not even a lock. So when you look at guys on this team, Tyrell Shavers is coming off a nasty injury. I think Josh Palmer is going to have a role on this team. He still is, in my opinion, their best separator in terms of just legit man-to-man. Obviously, I agree with you that they should find better guys. But I think one way or another, Josh Palmer is going to be a part of this team next year. And he was a guy that I thought earlier in the year should have had a larger role. So I won't even make the if you find someone better moving on. He is a hole plugger for me all the way.
I'm kind of with Caleb here. I have him like in between hole plugger and moving on, kind of the same situation Caleb said. Money-wise, it's not really that much of a difference. And if you want to revamp your wide receiver room, then he could be a guy that is gone. But I do like him as a player. I think exactly like you said, that he did, when he had production, it was, good production. And before he got hurt, he was doing pretty well. And then he got hurt and then was out for that month of the season and then wasn't very productive after that. But I do like him as a player. And to Caleb's point too, if he's further in the depth chart, I do like him as being someone to fill one of those holes. So I guess for now I'll say hole plugger, but kind of the same scenario as Caleb. It kind of depends on what the Bills do this offseason.
All right, we'll stay with the pass catchers. Next up is Mr. Dalton Kincaid, the tight end for the Bills, who missed a lot of last season, 5 games officially. It felt like more. He was in and out a lot with a knee injury that has been bothering him going back to the season before. The Bills are not going to get surgery for it after this. But Kincaid, in terms of what he's doing going forward, Rachel, I'll let you go first with this one. Dalton Kincaid going into next year.
I have him as a game changer. I just think the Bills don't need to really revamp their tight end room. I think Kincaid is at the forefront of it, and he's efficient. I mean, we didn't see him as much as we would like to because of injuries this season, but he was second in receiving yards in the team, most in receiving touchdowns. He, in the entire NFL of tight ends, had the most yards per route ran, so he's efficient. And I think if the Bills can revamp their receiver room, I think that can allow him to even have a bigger role than what he is right now, because we talked about before the season, what is Kincaid's role? And then he had to step into being like one of the primary pass catchers. But I do think he's a game changer. And I don't think, I mean, like I said, going back to looking at the tight end room, I think he's the number one guy. So I would say game changer for him.
I'm also going to go game changer. I know we've had lots of discussions about, is Kincaid the type of guy like a Travis Kelce, a George Kittle that can change a game? This season, he really wasn't. And I think that's because he was dealing with that knee injury all season long. I mean, Dawson Knox told us after the season was over that he pretty much had that torn ligament all season. So we know that was bothering him. I think he's still young enough, and we haven't seen it enough for me to call him injury prone. I think that's going to be probably a thing that we come back to quite a lot in this conversation is this guy injury prone? Mm-hmm. I don't think Kincaid is injury prone yet, and he's still young enough and he's still reliable enough that I think he can continue to grow into becoming one of those Travis Kelce, George Kittle-like guys. I still have that confidence in him. So for that reason, I think an offseason where hopefully he gets healthy, hopefully he can get over that knee injury and we can see a full season of him, I think he can become that game changer.
So I am 100% out on Kincaid having Kelce-like potential. It is not happening. He's not that guy.
Kelce might be high. Kelce might be too high.
Kittle is high also.
Kittle might be a little too
Bowers
high.
is high. He's not that guy.
I think he can be, like if Travis Kelce and George Kittle are 1A, I think he can be a 1B.
No.
I still have a hope.
You can have your opinion. I'm just saying
I still
out
hope
on
that he can get close. Maybe not quite there, but close.
I think he could be Dallas Goedert. I think that's probably the ceiling for Dalton Kincaid, which is still a really good tight end.
It is, yeah.
In terms of a receiver, Goddard's actually a good blocker too, and Kincaid is definitely never going to be that. But as an athlete, as a receiver, that's where I put the ceiling, and that could still be game changer. But you talked a minute ago about whether we're going to talk about any of these guys as injury or prone, and I don't put Kincaid in that category. But because of that, I'm going to downgrade him to hole plugger, because in part I can't count on him to be on the field enough to be a game changer. This is 2 years now in a row with the same knee injury. The Bills are going to treat it the same. Again, I'm not a doctor, so I guess I don't know exactly how the Bills should treat it. But this feels like we're going to do the same thing over and expect better results. And based on that, based on the lack of impact change Kincaid has made, I know the Bills will tell you X number of points more on the field, record when he's on the field. I get all that. I've watched the guy play. He's a good player. He can plug your hole as your athletic receiving tight end. Is he changing the game right this second? No. Could he develop into that? Sure. But I'm putting him in as a hole plugger, and that's it for next year. Again, in part because I don't trust him with the injury. Next up, we'll go to the defensive side of the ball. A guy that many Bills fans were excited about, who just didn't get a chance to play for a number of reasons. Michael Hoyt played 2 games last year. Started the year with a suspension, obviously, for the PED violation. Then the nasty knee injury caused him to miss the rest of the year. Rachel, you can go first. Michael Hoyt, game changer, hole plugger, or moving on? I don't think you're moving on, but what are you going to go?
I like Michael Hoyt. I think I can't put him at game changer status, so I'm going to put him at hole plugger status just because we haven't seen enough of him based on injury, which is why we're having this whole conversation in the first place. But he's explosive. I feel I've said this so many times when we have the Hoyt conversation. You just know, you feel his presence on the field. And he only played in 2 games, but he had 2 sacks in those games. And I think he has the potential to be a game changer if he stays healthy, if he can avoid suspension. I think for now I'm going to have to put him at hole plugger just because we haven't seen the ability or what the potential is for him to be a game changer.
Yeah, what we saw from him in our limited time was very, very good. Now, I don't think, like Rachel said, 2 sacks in 2 games. I don't think he's a 17 sack season type of guy. But I do think that he, especially with how this defensive line looks right now, where there's a lot of question marks, I think he can be a guy that comes in and you have enough confidence in to make the right play. And on top of that, I mean, the energy that this guy brings, we saw even his season was done and he's like, nah, I'm staying out here. Like I'm sitting, that's a guy that you want to keep around, even if it's just for that locker room vibe, but he does bring a lot more on the field as well. So for that reason, I'm also going to go with hole plugger.
If we could have a category called Uber hole plugger, I think that's what Hoyt might be.
Maybe.
Because he's like the ultimate glue guy. Now, I wouldn't put him there, not because he doesn't have the ability, but because the injury he's got probably means he's not going to be 100% next year. Coming off the big, nasty knee injury, those are usually things that take 2 years to return. And I think this is the frustrating point about the Hoyt signing, is that he played all these roles with the Rams. You bring him to Buffalo and what will the Bills do? He's a great chess piece. He can cover passes. And what's going to happen? He's got a 3-year contract. The first season was totally lost by the injury. The second season is almost totally lost because of the injury. And then by year 3, you're talking about whether or not you want to keep or extend or cut that guy. We may never get to see the full Michael Hoyt experience, but we're just talking about next year. And for that, I think solidly in hole plugger with a little bit of a concern for me because of how long it usually takes for you to recover from the type of injury that he had last year. We will stay on defense with the most talented player in that defense, Ed Oliver, who had a number of different injuries. The bicep one was the one that caused the most problem. I'll go first here because it's the easiest. Absolutely, he's a game changer. There's no doubt. I don't care what injury he has. I don't care how many times Ed Oliver has maybe not given you all that you would want to get from him in a postseason game. This is the best player on the defense. When he's right, he's an absolute game changer, to continue to pile on to the phrase I use. To be honest, this is another one where I wish we had one more category, which would be Avenger, and he has the potential to be at that level. I am a little concerned because he never quite seems to shake the injuries consistently, and even kind of talked about it on X this year, or Instagram, that I think he almost felt like he was snake bitten a little bit, talked about bad luck, I can't get away from whatever it was. So that part worries me a little, but still easily a game changer. Rach?
I'm with you all the way. This is the guy that every time he's out there, he makes a difference. He brings the energy. It makes an impact on the game. And if there's anyone who is going to bounce back from injuries, like you said, he does. This was a year that he's had several injuries and then was in rehab and then injured while he was in rehab. So it seems like the cards are maybe stacked against him, but I do feel like if anybody's going to bounce back and be as effective as they were before injury, it's going to be Ed Oliver. So I agree. He's a game changer.
If healthy, he seemed to me like the kind of guy that he could be one of the top defensive tackles in the entire league, not just on the Bills or in the AFC East, whatever. He's easily a game changer. I know I just said that with Michael Hoyt, two sacks in 2 games. I said that he's probably not going to keep that production. Oliver had 3 in 3 games, and I feel different about that. I feel he probably could have kept that production. And if he did keep that pace, he would have been second in the NFL in sacks, only behind the great Myles Garrett. So that's pretty good company. I think that if he's healthy and he can play all those games, he definitely has the opportunity to be sniffing the league leader in sacks. So for that, definitely 100% game changer.
With Ed Oliver, it's easily in the game changer category. But should the Bills expect to get a player? Let's actually, I'll make one up on the fly here. Season changer. Is he at that level? Because he can obviously come in, and we've seen him take over games. But I think the point of the show is to kind of look at the guys that the Bills lost and say, how much different will the Bills be next year when they get them back? They've had Ed Oliver healthy for certainly more games in other years than they had this year, and they still lose in the divisional round, don't get enough out of the defensive line. Is he the kind of guy that can change a season? Is there another gear, I think, is the best question to say with him?
I think there's definitely another gear because especially this last season, I think the way that he was playing, even though it was just in 3 games, I think he was looking like, okay, he could take that step, and then it was injuries that pulled him back. I think in years past, it's been his personal play that's kind of pulled him back, and we've been like, okay, maybe he can't, but he's still young-ish, he's still growing. I think if he can shake that injury bug, from what we saw this season, he definitely 100%, at least more, I at least have more confidence after those 3 games this season that he has that potential to be a season changer if he can stay healthy.
I'm with you on, I think he's been better last 2 or 3 years than the first 2 or 3 years.
Yes.
I don't know if he's got more in him than that.
I think there is another gear that can be reached, but just going back to if he's healthy, that's the big conversation. That's why we're, like I said, having this conversation. But he's been more productive these last few seasons, yes. But I do think, like you said, Caleb, when he's on the field, that's another, at least the 3 games we saw him this year, that was another level, I feel like, of Ed Oliver. Even though we only saw him in 3 games, we're still sitting here saying he's a game changer. We saw him in 3 games. So I feel like that in itself is enough to say, there is another gear that he can get to, and he can be a season-changing player.
I don't know if the gear, though, is, from what we've seen this season, I don't think he needs to go a different gear as in, production or level of play. I think that gear is just him playing for more than 2 games in a row and him getting comfortable and, actually getting his feet wet in real game situations. I think that might be the gear.
Consistency as opposed to upping the game.
Yeah.
I can see that. We'll stay on the defensive side of the ball. Terrell Bernard had another had an injury-plagued season coming off issues in other seasons. He missed the playoff game a couple years ago against the Chiefs. Had a number of different small things throughout the year. Now, the discussion with Bernard here gets a little muddled because the defense is going to get changed. And this is a guy being a smaller linebacker that might struggle a little bit in the new 3-4 scheme that Jim Leonhard uses as a base. But I don't know if it changes the discussion here. Let's see what the panel says. Rachel, you can go first with Terrell Bernard.
I was kind of back and forth with Terrell Bernard, but then I saw like how much money the Bills would be potentially losing if they got rid of him. So I'm going to say hole plugger. He's definitely not the guy in the linebacker room that stood out when he was healthy, but I don't think you can give up on him just yet. I don't really have like a substantial reason. I just feel like, I mean, we've obviously seen flashes of what he can be and what he's done, and he's a team captain, right? So we've seen like,
there's a big C in his jersey right there if you want to look.
Yeah, you're right. It's right in front of my face. And so we've seen flashes of what he can do. I was back and forth, but I think considering salary cap and all of that, I think you keep him as the hole plugger, but yeah, I don't know. I don't think we can get like they can let go of him just yet. But I'm still not impressed by what we've seen, I guess.
Hole plugger can be a solid backup. I don't think the Bills want Bernard to be that, but you can categorize hole plugger as that if you want.
He was really, really good in 2023. Since then, not only this season, last season was kind of just riddled with injuries and wasn't really able to get solid footing. I think there's still time, though. I think he's still young enough that you give him a chance to get back to that 2023 quote-unquote peak form that he had. I think that's still in there. I know that the change in a defensive scheme can, especially with the type of player he is, could be bad. It could also be good, just kind of switching things up. Maybe we'll see a kind of different version of him that we haven't seen yet. And then, again, like Rachel said, it's like $6 million in dead money or whatever if you cut him. That's just not worth it. And I do think that he can get back to that. And then again, like Rachel said, if the Bills have named him a captain, was it 2-3 seasons in a row now? I mean, that means that they're seeing something in him when he's not injured, when he is healthy. So that alone gives me enough confidence that it's still there.
I think certainly he's a hole plugger. He can fill some role for you. He might have to battle to be a starter in this new defense a little bit, depending on how things shake out. Maybe he moves from inside to outside. I mean, I don't think as an edge rusher that really suits his role. He's kind of been a guy that you want to have defensive tackles in front of him, clearing the way to let him go sideline and make tackles. And there's still a role for that guy in this defense. Missing 5 games in the regular season this year, 4 the year before. Injuries have been an issue the last couple of years. But I think there's enough raw ability, and you're right, the Bills are kind of stuck with him either way. So they're going to figure out he's going to hole. I guess at the end of the day, he's going to plug a hole no matter whether the Bills want him to or not. Stay on the defensive side of the ball because that was the worst part this year. Taylor Rapp, the safety who became, I think, a solid starter in 2024, didn't really like suffer a knee injury. Had something going on. They decided, hey, we've got to do the surgery and end your season. So he missed the most of last year, certainly the last 3 months or so. Caleb, you can go first with Taylor Rapp. Hole plugger, moving on, or a game changer?
I think he's a hole plugger right now. I do still think that he's a quality safety. Quality might be strong. I think he's still a decent safety. And especially when you look at the other options that the Bills currently have at safety, there aren't a whole ton that I feel better about than Taylor Rapp. So this might be kind of a thing like the receivers where like, hey, if they can go find a good guy to stand next to Cole Bishop, then I'd probably feel better about letting him go. But with how the team looks right now, I think you have to keep him. He does save a little bit of money if you cut him, but it's not enough for me to be like, all right, ship him out, get him out of here. I think he's good enough to be there, even if it is a backup, if the Bills can find somebody else to come in. So I'm gonna keep him at a hole plugger.
I am the category we talked about earlier. I am moving on if you can find somebody better. Hold on to him until you actually sign that guy and then move on. And it'll happen in free agency occasionally where you might have a guy and say, that $3 million that I think is what Rapp's number would be if they save it, somewhere around there. That money the Bills will use after they sign somebody else. So you can plan on and say, look, we're trying to fill this hole, but we're not actually going to make the cut until after Rapp's gone. I think Rapp can play safety in the league. I think he's above the line of starter level, maybe, like you said, not by a lot. And I think the Bills would want to get better. The other problem with Rapp, though, too, is that his skill set and Cole Bishop's skill set kind of overlap a little bit. So it makes it a little less palatable to want to have both of them. But I'll stand on if the Bills, I think, will want to try and find something better. And when they do, then I move on, but not before.
Yeah, I don't have much else to add. I mean, same thing as Caleb said. If the guys that are opposite of Bishop, I don't think are better than Taylor Rapp. I mean, you're not going to have Poyer. Jordan Hancock, I don't think is the option.
He's not there yet. You know,
yeah, so I mean, I think you have to keep him, to your point, and if you find someone better, then he, is further in the depth chart, or you get rid of him or whatever. But I think for now, Hole Plugger is fitting for this one too.
Staying on the defense, because it was ridiculously beaten up last year. How about the rookie, Max Hairston, who, unlike most of these guys we talked about, who missed a lot of their time at the end of the year, Max Hairston missed more of his time at the beginning of the year with a training camp injury, did end up suffering another injury in ankle at the end of the year, which hurt him when it went to the playoffs. But by then, Trey White had kind of taken over as the starter, and Max Hairston was just a backup. Rachel, you can go first. Game changer, Hole Plugger. I mean, we're not moving on from a first-round pick in year 2, but which of the first 2 categories does he land for you?
I'm going to put him in my made-up 4th category of game changer of the future.
Okay.
I know we've had
making up rules over here.
I cannot besmirch your rule breaking, because I am the worst offender on this show for sure.
I know we've talked about a lot about Jim Leonard coming on defense and how is Hairston going to fit in that, and then we've made the point several times of you don't get rid of a guy who ran a 4.2 or 4.3 at the combine, which I think is a big part of this. I think game changer of the future, because obviously he missed 8 games. We didn't see much of him, but I like the type of player Hairston is. I think he has the potential to be a game changer. I guess that automatically puts him in the hole plugger position. And that's where I'm gonna put him, because I mean, you can't get rid of him. He's gonna cost you $9 million to get rid of him. So that's where we're gonna keep him for now.
Thad, you kind of already said it, but like, this is one of the guys that was immediately off the table. Like, it's not even an option. I know it is technically an option, but it really isn't.
You could trade him in theory.
You could, but I don't think you do. To Rachel's point, it's a first-round rookie. I know it's the only kind of sliver of reason I can find of why you would move on for him is that it's a new defensive regime, and this isn't a guy that really fits into the thing that you want to do. So maybe you want to trade him away for whatever you can get for him and then try to build around that. That's the only reason I can find. But like we said, with how fast he is, you don't just get rid of him like that. I have him as a hole plugger. I kind of do like Rachel's 4th category, hole plugger of the future or game changer of the future. But if we're looking at just 2026, I think he's a hole plugger. I think he can kind of evolve into a good cornerback too, aside of Christian Benford. Yeah,
I'm with hole plugger, even though I think Rachel's answer is probably the correct one. I mean, at the very least, the speed by itself, he has the capability to be a game changer. That's why you spend a first-round pick on a guy like that. The thing that kind of holds me back from even going to the Rachel made-up category is the way the defense is built, or at least the corner coach, Jay Valai, who preached press defense and being physical. That is not Max Hairston's game. So the Bills want to play that. I feel like I don't want to go to Kyer Elam, square peg and round hole kind of thing, but we're reaching there. And then there's another guy we might get to, Dorian Strong, too, who fits better in that role. And I don't think it's out of the realm. We get a repeat of the Elam draft where the 1st-round pick, Elam, doesn't work, but the 6th-round pick, Christian Benford, becomes a star. You could get that with Hairston and Strong, especially based on what the Bills want to do defensively. But with the conversation just being centered around Hairston, hole plugger for now, even if of all the hole pluggers we've talked about, this was certainly the one with the highest ceiling. Special teams next. Tyler Bass, the kicker who missed all of 2025. Matt Prater, frankly, probably had a better season than any of Bass's previous seasons. Maybe rookie second year, but there's an argument for that. Rach, you can go first. Tyler Bass, game changer, hole plugger, or moving on? I'm
moving on from Tyler Bass. All right. I mean, he didn't obviously play last season. In 2024, he was, I think, 83% of field goals, which is a little bit below average, missed some extra points. I mean, he's never been someone high up on the Bills list of like, oh, we trust Tyler Bass to go out there to kick the game winner. And I think bringing in Matt Prater this year shows you that, okay, yes, Matt Prater's 41 years old, but there's kickers out there that can do the same thing. Like you said, I think I agree with you. Matt Prater had a better season than Tyler Bass has probably had these last several years. So yeah, I think they got to move on.
I'm moving on too, but I'm not happy about it. I'm not super confident in it just because kicker isn't, I know it's Matt Prater proved that you can bring in a kicker that can be good. But when Matt Prater was hurt, all the other kickers the Bills brought in proved that it's really not that easy. And also, if you get rid of Tyler Bass, what is the future at the position? Do you bring Matt Prater in for another year? If you do, are you confident that he's going to be healthy? I don't hate bringing Matt Prater back. I thought he had a good season. You're also bringing in a special teams coach that he has familiarity with, so that also adds on. But just the fact that it's not guaranteed that he's going to be able to play all 17 games for you is tough. Now, I know obviously Tyler Bass coming off an injury, it's not guaranteed that he would either, but I'm going to say moving on, I'm hoping that the Bills can hold on to Prater. If you can't hold on to Prater and you get rid of Tyler Bass, it becomes very tough of where you are going to go. But I am gonna say moving on.
That line of thinking has me putting him at hole plugger and not worried about it. I just don't think there are enough kickers out there to where I don't want to be out on the island trying to figure out where my boat is to get off. Tyler Bass is a solid enough kicker, and Matt Prater is not a guy at 40 whatever years old. I think the quad injury he had at the end of the year where he's good and then he's hurt at halftime and now we're worried. I don't want to play that game next year. So if Tyler Bass is good, I'll plug him into my hole at kicker and go along that way, understanding that, look, I probably don't have the best or most dependable kicker in the league, but I know there's way worse out there if I have to go find somebody else. Is there an argument for maybe spending a draft pick and going really young? Sure. But I have enough confidence in Bass to be that guy. Back to the defensive side of the ball, another rookie, Landon Jackson, who basically missed the whole season. Now, he missed early games because he was just benched. He just wasn't good enough. But then, as Brandon Beane said, suffers the car crash-like injury that ruins his knee. And like Michael Hoyt, he's a guy that when you think about him next year, probably has recovering to do before he's back to 100%. Rach?
I'm kind of torn, split on this one. Initially I was like, I think they have to move on just because I just don't see him being the defensive end that's going to really impact the game. But I don't know if that's a fair assessment because he missed 16 games and we haven't seen much, but then he was benched when he did have an opportunity. So I'm really trying to figure out where to put him, and money wise, they're not really saving a ton with, if they get rid of him. So I'm going to say moving on just because I think there's better options out there, or at least within maybe the D line, but then maybe there's not. I don't know. I'm a little torn up here. I'm going to say moving on. Final answer.
Final answer.
I got to stop myself.
We talked about Maxwell Harrison having that kind of game changer of the future. That Landon Jackson's not anywhere near that. He's going to be a hole plugger for me, but he's not anywhere. I don't think he ever becomes a game changer. I think you keep him at hole plugger, though, because of the fact that you spent a third-round pick on him. Again, this is a new defensive regime. I just talked about how when you bring in a new defensive coaching staff, you want to kind of mix things up, but getting rid of your first-round pick from the year before is difficult. I think making it a third-round pick makes it a little bit easier if they want to move on from Landon Jackson. But still, I think there was enough potential there coming out of college that you give him a chance in year two, you give him a chance to continue to grow. It's a third-round pick. It's no surprise to me that you take a guy in the third, fourth, fifth round and they don't go off immediately, right? That's not a surprise. Normally, those guys, if they're going to be good, it takes them a couple seasons.
You don't want him to be benched week one, though, either.
No, you don't. But I still think he had enough potential coming out of college that you give him another year of chance, especially with the fact that we don't know what this defensive line group is going to look like. I mean, you can pick up some guys in free agency in the draft, but you can't completely revamp the whole thing. So you have to keep some pieces. And I think if there's going to be pieces you want to keep, you probably want to lean on the younger side. So for that reason, I'm going to keep him as a hole plugger.
It's a good argument. I'm going to go moving on because now I liked him a lot coming out of the draft, but being a healthy scratch to start your rookie season discourages me. The thing that's more discouraging is that I really have questions about whether he fits in this defense. As generally a 4-3 defensive end, he's built to be a strong, push through the edge kind of guy as opposed to a speed rusher. Now, look, you can play that in this defense, and there'll be opportunities for that style of defensive end and what Jim Leonard wants to do. But I think of all the guys on the defense, Jackson is the one that concerns me the most. And we talked about it earlier, or just a minute ago. He's probably going to have some recovery time too. So now it's wrong fit, hasn't looked good, doesn't probably have 100% of the capability that you want to get out of him. So for that, I'd like to try and take the draft pick and see if I can get something for him. It might depend on the trade market too. You can't just assume that you're going to get whatever you want for a guy like that immediately too. All right, that's going to do it for this edition of BKL Nightly. Next week, we're going to recap the offensive and defensive seasons, talk about what we liked, what we didn't. For Rachel and Caleb, I'm Thad. We will catch you again on Monday.
Get the Rochester First streaming app today for everything you love from News 8 On Demand, plus exclusive shows you won't see anywhere else. Search ROC and download for free on Roku, Amazon Fire, and Apple TV.